So public servants and politician salaries. So Charlie, I'm curious. Did you know that the Governor General gets paid just shy of $500,000 a year, and he gets a house, and he gets cars, and he gets like a whole heap of things paid for him and his family? And did you know that Prime Minister gets just over $500,000 a year? Not to mention like about $200,000 a year after they finish in like a retirement kind of pension, if you will. For additional reference, the public service has an average of about $250,000 of revenue for federal politics. Like what they just had a pay rise as well of 2.75%, and they found out that the average salary was exactly about $217,000 for the federal politics. So are we just all going to run away and go become politicians now? Like this sounds like it's a pretty good business to be in.
I think this is the greatest scam ever. They vote on their own wage increases.
It's fantastic. And they justified it, by the way, and I'm going to quote this. The wage increase, and I quote, was to keep up with the current employment market and state of the economy.
This is all right. All right, I'm going to do some knee-jerk reactions. I actually think $500,000 a year to be the Prime Minister of Australia, not enough. I actually think I realize the pension they get is like pretty awesome, right? So at this point, I think it's like $200,000 a year for the rest of their lives.
Yep.
Right. So that's substantial. Like if you run the country, I almost feel like that's reasonable. I really do. Like that is our top job. That is the person who is showing leadership. It's how we represent to the world. Right. I absolutely am. I am fine with that one. As you go into other ones, though, it gets a bit interesting.
It definitely does.
Like I'm not sure people really understand how much politicians get paid. And I would think that what concerns me the most, this is the thing that I would say annoys me with politics. I would just love to know how much time they actually spend doing things versus playing politics.
Yep.
Like how much time do they spend like just shitting on their opponents, trying to like rally votes and, sway things for their own benefit versus actually doing things that propel the country forward. And it's unfortunate that in the news cycle and mass media, it's like these political games get way too publicized, which only like feeds that cycle. So that on that side of things, that's where I kind of stand. Actually, I'll also ask for your comments on that before I go to like the other areas.
No, so I agree. And I always look at the Prime Minister's job similar to like a CEO. The challenge is you are the one out at the front that anything bad happens, it lands on your shoulders. Anything good happens and it's the economy. Right, like as everybody else has created this success, it's never as the Prime Minister, like you are the one. So I would wholeheartedly agree with you, but it's like the sub layers below that. They sort of sit in a room constantly. We've seen it all. They kind of bicker, and nothing really changes at the speed that you hope that things changed at, etc. Like imagine if businesses ran the same way as politics with the same kind of revenue. Granted that businesses can't force revenue like governments can force revenue, right? Like they want a pay rise, they can click their fingers and get a pay rise. Like it's done, we'll just tax people more, or done, we'll just go and print some more money, done, we'll do X, Y, and Z. Like so I agree with you on the Prime Minister, but from a outputs and delivery perspective, the amount of time it takes just to get like a housing permit approved through like a council, let alone a bill getting passed through Parliament, it just is crazy. And on points that you and I would just like bat our eyes and go, I can't believe they're even talking about that because it's so irrelevant for the progress of a country.
Yeah, the bureaucracy as well, right? Just like the building approvals is a really good example. I look at that and go, and this is like the reason why you look at like Telstra and CBA, like they were government institutions and they became privatized because the conclusion was that they would be better run by businesses who had to drive a profit versus like when it's like just running for the sake of the country. Although you'd have to argue things like Australia Post are run pretty well considering they are still like government things.
There were 27 of these public figures that get paid more than $1 million a year.
So that's what I find interesting is like our Prime Minister gets $500,000 a year, but the guy who runs the Reserve Bank or whoever runs Australia Post or Snowy Hydro more than $1 million a year, and NBN's in that as well, I think.
So if you looked at that, right, so you think about the Australian economy as a company, right? Revenue lines, expense lines, you've obviously got NBN's the same, Snowy Hydro is the same, AusPost the same. To an extent, RBA, the Reserve Bank of Australia, the same. Which one is more profitable?
I don't actually know.
You'd have to argue that from a revenue number, the economy would have to be significantly up there. And because of the costs to maintain it, you're right, I might not know which one's more profitable. But if the CEO of NBN is getting paid over $3 million, the CEO of Snowy Hydro, I think, was over $2 million. CEO of Ozpost was like $1.6 million. And then the guy that's running the country is like $500,000. Like, do you sit there and look at these couple of $1 million salaries and say they are justified because of what they could do elsewhere? So
definitely,
yeah,
wholeheartedly.
Because like NBN, you're coming up with against some massive players in Telstra and Optus, etc., to try and stay competitive. In Ozpost, like I know that I think they bought Star Trek or something like that, and they merged that into the greater company. But you're coming up against some fierce competitors, right? And so now you need to go and get a commercial CEO to go and run these things, and then you can sort of continue down the line. Like there's other sort of services and public services that of people that get paid over $1 million a year. Like to me, I look at that and go, they are some tough jobs. Like you would have to pay me a lot of money for me to be able to get into those roles and be highly successful based on the comparison I could get elsewhere, right? Because I actually argue that they get paid less.
I think they still get paid less. But like, let's just use an example here. Is like if you've got, we'll pick NBN as the example here. Is like if you've got, well, cool, we'll pay you a lower, because this is a public thing, we're only going to pay you $250,000 a year. And they're looking at going, okay, well, if I go work at Telstra or go overseas, I'm going to get like $2-3 million a year.
Yep.
Then our government services like NBN end up with people that are just like not good at the job.
Subpar. Yep.
Yeah. Now, regardless of what you think of the NBN, depending on where you live, in some places it's amazing. They've done a really good job. In others, questionable. But the point I'll make there is that like, don't as a country we want the best people running these?
We do.
Like I've looked at so many business owners and gone, it's not what they do, it's who's running it. Like if I ran your business, it would be different to how this person runs that business. Like the quality of the person at the top of these organizations matters a lot. I would argue it's probably one of the most important roles, if not the most important role to ensuring, like from a top-down perspective, is that these things are successful. And same with Snowy Hydro. Like this is a massive energy project.
Huge.
If he's sitting there getting poached every day for double salary to go to mobile, like why would we expect him to stay? I wouldn't stay. I think that self-interest plays here.
I think that it was interesting because as I was preparing for this, I was like, my knee-jerk reaction was like outraged. I'm like, that's it. Let's all shut up shop and go become politicians. This is fantastic. And then I started looking at, and I actually know friends who work in sort of the public service, and I was looking at the salaries that they had up on Seek to actually go, is this kind of comparable to like the market rates, right? So whatever the equivalent for the federal government, right, of people who are getting paid $217,000, $300,000, $350,000, $400,000, for the equivalent accountability, responsibility of their role for the amount of people they manage and what they're accountable for and assets, etc., does it match against these other businesses like your NBN, your Snowy Hydros, your Ozpost? And from my rudimentary desktop research, the lower tiers of federal parliament and politicians actually get paid significantly more for those roles compared to these other sort of NBNs, Snowy Hydros, etc.
The top roles.
Yeah, and you sit there and you look at it and you go, if you cut off sort of the executive layer and you go, cool, executive layer, we can justify that, and maybe the Prime Minister and people supporting him might deserve to get paid a little bit more, because in comparison, the other guys in these other companies, they do get paid quite a bit more to sort of not go elsewhere. But if you go below that layer, I do see a disparate sort of gap between what politicians get paid to sort of people in sort of working under these sort of management layer or departmental lead layer within sort of these other sort of public companies.
Is it the argument to that though, in a lot of cases, is that if you work in government for a number of years, eventually you'll reach a point where you've got really strong relationships, you're a specialist in some sort of area, and then you go private and people will hire you because, oh, this guy's got government ins, right? We might be able to get access to someone, or we might be able to do it. Like you hear stories about many politicians going into private sector after. So I think that's probably like I don't want to say the pathway, but it'd be commonly known, right? There'd be many people sitting in like lower paid jobs knowing that, hey, 5 years from now,
I'm going to get grabbed.
This is going to be, I'm going to jump to private and this is going to be a killing.
Hey, fellow business owner, if this topic and value-packed short video has resonated with you at all, and you want to dive deeper into being a full stack business owner, check out the full episode by clicking the link on your screen or in the description right now.